apparently it also doesn't sit right with the new incoming presidential administration, who, again, they are saying that as part of bigger tax reforms, they are going to axe that EV tax credit. And, if you bought an EV with that tax credit now, hey, fine, you got it, take advantage of it. All right, that's how the system is. We're playing by those rules right now, but we're going to change those rules, and I think this is for the better. Now, one could argue that it's anti-innovation. Oh, well, we got to subsidize EVs because we need people to buy the EVs because they won't buy them if we don't subsidize them. I hear that argument from one very vocal group of people quite often, and for that I have to say, if people aren't buying them, and because people don't want them, you have to subsidize them to get people to want them, that means there is something fundamentally wrong with the product because people aren't going out in droves to buy it.
From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
And here we are, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show. Matt West here, hanging out with you, talking cars on the weekend. Loaded show for you today. This is going to be a fun one. Bugatti sets a new speed record, but not the one you think. Also, EV tax credits could abruptly end in 2 months, and we'll talk about why I think that is a good thing. Also, Porsche kills the best car ever. In fact, the pinnacle of Porsche is going to die. And I'm very sad about that. And so we'll get to that and more on this edition of the show. Now, we survived the near-apocalyptic winter last week. And this week, meanwhile, has been surprisingly temperate. I've been actually driving my project cars for a change, if you can believe that. Yeah, I know. Me driving my project cars. I know. It's crazy. Well, project car, because there's only one of them that's working now. So, because the heater core died on my 240 and the S2000s, well, it's not done yet. Actually, that's not true. The Jeep does work. It does work. It works fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Aside from the fact that it is still topless from the earlier summer and fall weather. I guess we're technically in fall now, but it's cold. So, no, it's definitely too cold. It's nice to drive. It's nice enough to drive decent, fun cars, but it is far too cold to drive that Jeep with the top down. I mean, maybe in the middle of the day it's fine, but the second you get caught past 4 p.m., you're freezing to death. So, that being said, my A86 has been running, knock on wood, there we go, decently, but I did do something interesting that you might like to check out. I'm going to post it on the social medias for this show, Facebook, YouTube, as well as TikTok. I'm gonna have that going up soon, but it's gonna be a video, at least a short one, demonstrating how I cannibalized parts off of a junkyard Volvo and then glued some PVC pipe together to make my brakes work better, and also to free up a vacuum port that I need, like the only vacuum port that I have, so that I could at least have a idle air control valve. So anyway, it all works now. It's amazing. I did not die, evidenced by me being here. At least I hope I didn't die driving that car and having the brakes fail because of the ghetto PVC pipe thing that I made for it. So anyway, that'll be up on the social media for the show. Again, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Now, if you have ever wrenched on cars, even just a little bit, it's remarkably easy to leave some tools lying around. It's remarkably easy to do that, and this is a surprising story here. But and I've done this before. For example, I lost my favorite little 1/4-inch drive ratchet wrenching on Stroker Jeep because I set it down and it fell into the intake manifold area behind the fuel rail, and it just like perfectly sat underneath there, so perfectly. I didn't see it, and the reason I'm telling you this is because, well, this happened to someone else, but maybe with a little bit bigger of a consequence than if I do this. But no, I've done this, like I said, and I've left that ratchet there. And what's crazy is I thought I lost my favorite ratchet, well, favorite 1/4-inch drive at least, And I couldn't find it for weeks and weeks on end. And actually probably a couple of months went by. And I finally moseyed my way on down to the hardware store and bought another one to replace it, which, by the way, if you know anything about wrenching on, it doesn't even have to be cars, just doing any sort of work with tools, as soon as you lose a tool and you can't find it, as soon as you replace that tool, the lost one will show up as well. And now you have two tools. And this was exactly the case for me. I replaced my little 1/4-inch drive ratchet, and then I opened the hood on the Jeep to do, I can't remember what it was, and I saw my original one sitting there, just kind of underneath the fuel rail. I saw the shine of it poking out underneath there. And it's not even like a tight space. Like you would have thought I would have seen that. I mean, that's not even a very hidden space. Not like modern cars with all this stuff. It's a pretty open space there. So, but this happened to a Airbus A380. And get this, it flew nearly 300 hours with a missing tool in the engine. Yeah, 300 hours. And this is from the airline Qantas. You have to excuse me there. I've been getting over a cold and I'm just hacking on the microphone here. But anyway, it's a Qantas Airbus A380, and it flew 34 times with a 4-foot, 1-inch nylon tool, which is used to turn, apparently, the engine's intermediate pressure compressor during borescope inspections. And I'll pretend that I know what's going on there. I will pretend that I know what that is. I know cars. I don't know jet engines. If you would like to start a competing radio show, the Automotive ADHD show, where you talk about aircraft and stuff, that would be, I actually think that would be pretty entertaining. But anyway, so it was wedged inside of one of the engines. It's a Rolls-Royce Trent engine, and it got stuck, I guess, maybe more in the front portion of it. But either way, this plane flew from December 6th, 2023 to January 1st, 2024. So technically old news, but this just became public now. And apparently it didn't cause any issues. And investigators, this ultimately is in Australia, by the way, I should have mentioned that, determined that the tool, they say, was left in the engine previously during scheduled maintenance in Los Angeles. And, it never caused any issues. But you have to wonder, was someone missing their tool? Some technician was missing the engine intermediate pressure compressor nylon 4-foot tool. That doesn't roll off the tongue very well, does it? But you would think a 4-foot tool. I have a breaker bar that's about 4 feet. I would notice that it's missing in my toolbox. I would notice that there is a big gap where it probably should be in the toolbox. Now, don't get me wrong. My garage and my toolbox is no example of being organized. In fact, if you're watching on video, I'm here in the AM 1460 The Answer radio studio again, not the garage studio, because the garage is such a total mess, and I haven't had time to clean it. So really, I'm not the example you should be looking to for, finding organizing your tools and things like that. But a 4-foot tool, that to me, you really, and then what? You have the next job? You got another plane that comes in for a engine intermediate pressure compressor borescope inspection. See, I'm learning. You get another plane that comes in for that, and then you go to grab your 4-foot tool, and it's not there. So what do? I guess you borrow your buddy's tool. But I feel like in the aviation industry, this is a little more locked down. Like I said, I don't know a ton about aviation, but I do like aviation as a maybe from afar. I would love to get into it. It's just, believe me, it's even private aviation is so expensive. I'm complaining about my car stuff being expensive. That's nothing. That's not even close to Project Airplane stuff. Project Car stuff, no, that's easy. So anyway, I would think there's some sort of rules, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are, where you have to check your tools in, you have to keep track of everything, you have to have a checklist for this very reason. Now, thankfully, nothing happened to this aircraft in almost a year of commercial service. Thankfully, nothing happened, but I know for a fact that catastrophes, disasters have happened before because somebody left a tool where they shouldn't. So that's why they keep track of tools. Now, again, thankfully, this turned out not to be an issue, but I have a feeling they're going to pull that tool out of the engine and then look at whose name is on it. And whoever's name is on it, he should probably be looking for another job. Like right now, start looking now. So, if you forget a ratchet in your car like I did, no big deal. But an airplane, an Airbus A380, a little bit bigger. So anyway, hey, coming up after the break, we're talking more cars right here and EV tax credits here on Automotive ADHD. That's naughty. You shouldn't do that. I saw that blurred license plate. I saw that. Anyway, I was told that I can't mention who did that, but it should have made it on the air anyway. So, yeah, that's naughty. Don't do that. But anyway, you're listening to the Automotive ADHD show. Matt West here, hanging out with you, talking cars on the weekend. Several great radio stations all across southern Colorado. AM 1400 KRLN in Canyon City, of course, 91.7 KLZR in the Wet Mountain Valley, and here in Colorado Springs, home base, AM 1460, The Answer, as well as 100.7 The Word. Man, I almost feel like I'm syndicated. I don't know who in their right mind would syndicate me, but here we are. So, also, if you want to send your car sounds into the show and have a chance to score some cool stuff, Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD is the place to do it. I should make a disclaimer. I have said this before. You do not need to break any laws to send your car sounds into the show. And if you send me car sounds from a street takeover, I won't play those, by the way. I don't support the street takeovers. Those are bad. They're bad for all of us. So, but anyway, again, Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. And if email is more your speed, I do have an email for the show, matt@throttlewarrior.com. So you can send that in too if you're not on Facebook. And of course, I'll play them here on the radio. You have a chance to win some free stuff. It's all a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. And of course, I live vicariously through your car sounds because most of the time my crusty project cars aren't running. So when yours are, I'm sort of living through your project cars. I'm enjoying them somewhat, by proxy, you could say. So, anyway, so I got to talk about a few things here. And by the way, I noticed coming into the studio here this morning, I'm here in the AM 1460 The Answer studio. I've got my little toy car here because I'm not in the garage with the big toy car. But somebody took if you're watching on video, on the microphone stand here, there was this nice big sticker that said Jim Miller for mayor, Colorado Springs, and somebody took it. I don't know who. I don't know where it is. I've looked all over and I cannot find it. So there's perhaps only one answer to this, by the way, which is that I'm calling some sort of fraud. I think some shenanigans have happened, and someone has stolen the Jim Miller for mayor sticker. It could be even borderline campaign fraud, election fraud. I'm not sure, but it definitely could be that. And with that being the case, either that or, maybe somebody is just that big of a fan of Jim Miller. I mean, he does have a dedicated fan base here in Colorado Springs. So, and if that is you, by the way, send me a message on the Facebook page and, or even better, send a car sound in, and you will also find a Jim Miller for mayor sticker probably arriving at your doorstep sometime. So, anyway, there you go. I wish I had it to show it to you, but alas, it is gone. It is gone, indeed. It is a tragedy. That sticker will be mourned for all of eternity. So, now I got to talk a little bit about EV tax credits. Okay, so I've talked about these a few times on the show. If you've listened to the show for a long period of time, you know that. And you know my position on the EV tax credits, and we'll get into that. I'll maybe reiterate that position a little bit. This comes by way of Car and Driver. Eric Stafford, hat tip there, which says, President-elect Donald Trump and his transition team want to end federal EV tax credits, per a report by Reuters. And they say the report claims that killing the $3,750 to $7,500 government subsidy is part of a wider tax reform legislation. So now, right now, where we're at right now, if you buy a new EV or some plug-in hybrids, you can get a tax credit. And again, that's going to be between $3,750 and $7,500. Also, if you lease a vehicle, that's another great way to get the tax credit. That is another option. Now, this is in addition, I should say, to the state tax credits, which that varies, of course, state to state. And if I take a look right here, Colorado, for example, we have a $5,000, according to Colorado.gov, a $5,000 EV tax credit. And again, that's for new EV purchases or leases. So, but there are some rules. So, for example, on the federal one right now, it has to be a new vehicle, and it has to be within a certain price range. So cars have to have, they say, an MSRP of $55,000 or less, while light trucks and SUVs must cost less than $80,000. And there is a loophole that some people have taken advantage of and spotted, which is leasing. Okay, so leasing, when you lease a vehicle, the U.S. Department of Treasury apparently classifies that as a commercial vehicle because it's being leased to you. Think of it like a rental. A rental car is a commercial vehicle. And here in Colorado, they've got fleet commercial plates on them. So, with that being a commercial vehicle, that means it actually skirts some of those requirements for having that MSRP of $55,000 or less for a car, or $80,000 or less for a SUV or truck. And now, granted, there's also some other restrictions here. I'm laying out the groundwork for you here, but there's some other restrictions. One of which being that the vehicle needs to be made in North America, not specifically the United States, but North America in general. So, Mexico, United States, Canada, the frozen land up north. And they do make some cars in the frozen land up north. And they do make cool trucks up there, like diesel electric trucks. I love talking about Edison on this show, as you know. So, anyway, all of that being said, let's take, for example, if you qualify for the maximum tax credit and federal, and say you live in the state of Colorado, which if you're listening on the radio, you probably are. And that's going to be $7,500 for the maximum federal, plus Colorado's $5,000 EV tax credit, which it doesn't take much math to figure out that is $12,500 on any new, well, not any, but again, generally a lot of new EVs. And if you look at EVs, it's easy to see why these are popular. If you look at EVs that are fairly cheap, which there's not many that are cheap, but say you find a, hypothetical, $35,000 Tesla Model Y, and you subtract $12,500 from it, you're getting that car for a little over $20,000 some dollars, right? So that, to me, is an incentive, but yet we haven't seen a huge number of people take advantage of that. We've seen automakers lose money on EVs. Ford is losing a ton of money on their EV line. Now, I've said it before. I like my gas-powered cars, but I do like the idea of EV pickup trucks because they make sense in a few specific use cases. Which, by the way, means we shouldn't blanket mandate them because they work in this narrow margin. And if you were in this very narrow margin, they work very well for you. But if you're all over here, they might not work as well for you. So, but, Ford's been losing a ton of money on that. Despite that, the F-150 Lightning, I like the truck. I've got a family member with it, with one. And he likes it a ton, in fact. And I enjoy, being around that truck. It's a nice vehicle. I enjoy it. So, but with all of that being said, my problem here with the EV tax credits is that they shouldn't exist in the first place. They should not exist in the first place. And with that, you have to look at the fact that this includes, just on the federal level, $55,000 for cars, $80,000 for trucks and SUVs. $80,000 is a lot of money to spend. If you can afford an $80,000 vehicle, if you can earnestly afford an $80,000 vehicle, why am I, who does not have an electric vehicle, why am I subsidizing your $80,000 vehicle? Now, you can get this into the whole debate on subsidies as a whole, even outside of the automotive realm, and do they make sense? Do they not? I'm not gonna go too far into those weeds right now, but just keeping that here within the automotive focus, if you can afford an $80,000 vehicle, you don't need my help paying for it. And even a $55,000 vehicle. Now, granted, $55K nowadays doesn't always get you a whole lot of car. It is the base price thereabout of a nice fifth generation Supra, I will add, BMW Supra. See what I did there? Anyway, it is that. So I mean, that's a moderately nice sports car, right? That's a good, decent sports car you could buy with that money. Granted, you can trim a Toyota Camry up practically to being almost that expensive these days. So I mean, it's not all that uncommon. But once again, you are taking the entire tax-paying base and telling them, all of us as taxpayers, that maybe are driving around a busted-up minivan. You got one car for the whole family. It's a 15-year-old minivan. Someone took the catalytic converters off of it 2 weeks ago, and you're just trying to get to work with it, and you're still subsidizing the guy who's got an $80,000 electric pickup. And something about that just doesn't sit right with me. It just doesn't. Now, apparently it also doesn't sit right with the new incoming presidential administration, who, again, they are saying that as part of bigger tax reforms, they are going to axe that EV tax credit. And, if you bought an EV with that tax credit now, hey, fine, you got it. Take advantage of it. All right, that's how the system is. We're playing by those rules right now, but we're going to change those rules. And I think this is for the better. Now, one could argue that it's anti-innovation. Oh, well, we got to subsidize EVs because we need people to buy the EVs because they won't buy them if we don't subsidize them. I hear that argument from one very vocal group of people quite often. And for that, I have to say, if people aren't buying them, and because people don't want them, you have to subsidize them to get people to want them, that means there is something fundamentally wrong with the product, because people aren't going out in droves to buy it. If it was a perfect product, if it checked all the boxes, it was the best car in the universe. It ran on fairy dust, and it could go 1,000,000 miles per gallon of fairy dust. I don't know, but hey, you know what I'm saying, though. You know what I'm getting at, and I think that this is a good thing. Like, if there was a perfect car, we'd all be buying it. We shouldn't have to have the government saying, no, this thing, you need to buy it. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. We're going to talk about some other fun things coming up. The best Porsche in the world is going away. I'll tell you about that after the break.
He's the nut behind the wheel and behind the mic. This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
So before the break, I was talking a little bit about, I mentioned that I would talk about the best Porsche in the world. And, how it's unfortunately going away now. I mean, what's going on with that? Porsche, why are you doing that? Why do you tease us with cool cars that we all love and say, wow, this is awesome. We need more of these. And then you go, all right, we're canceling production. Yeah, everyone likes these too much. We got to cancel them. I don't know what's going on with that. So you may be familiar with the Porsche 911 Dakar. And Dakar, not as being like the car. No, it's Dakar Rally, like the big off-road rally. Yeah, that one. So The Porsche 911 Dakar, if you're unfamiliar, is a off-road focused 911, and I think that this is tremendously cool. I think that off-road focused sports cars are an untapped market. They have immense potential, and we ought to tap into that market more. And Porsche, they dipped their toe in it. They dipped their toe in that market and then said, yeah, we're done. Yeah, sorry. It was a cool car, but we're not going to sell any more of them. And the crazy thing is, it's not because they didn't sell. No, every single one of them that they've made is practically sold. They're just teasing us because they're Porsche, and they do that. And they take this car that's decently, well, it's still expensive for a 911, but they take a car like that, and this is an attainable car that you could buy. You have a good salary, but it's nothing crazy. It's no Pagani. It's no, anything like that. It's not some really high-end exotic. It's not a Bugatti, a Pagani, a Koenigsegg. It's none of those. It's a Porsche. A Porsche, and as crazy as some Porsches are, I mean, Porsches, they've been making a bazillion. Yes, a bazillion. That is the official number I checked, by the way. A bazillion Porsches, 911s, Caymans, Boxsters. They've basically been making one flavor or another of the slightly faster Volkswagen Beetle for, like 80 years practically now. So, and they've been doing that. So, while Porsches are cool, while they're decently, nicely built cars, I don't think that at the end of the day, they're necessarily anything special. But if I do see a 911 Dakar driving around, I go, wow, look at that. And when I was at the Pikes Peak hill climb this last summer, and I was up there with Jimmy Ford, jimmyfordracing.com. Go check him out. By the way, he's got a great video up on his YouTube, a full recap of the race. You should check that out if you haven't. But anyway, I was up there at the hill climb, and the Porsche team was, I guess, just driving around in 911 Dakars, not racing the Dakar. They were just using it to shuttle people from this area to that area. At least that's what it looked like to me. They looked like official Porsche Colorado Springs vehicles, and anyway, so I thought that was really interesting that they're just using a couple of Dakars to mob around the hill climb area to shuttle a driver here, send a team member over there, whatever, right? And that's the perfect use for a car like this, especially a nice windy mountain road like Pikes Peak, but one that also experiences insane conditions. Even if you're just a team member, you don't have a race car up there. You're battling ice, rain, snow, all sorts of crazy weather. The weather there changes every 5 seconds. Like if you've probably been, any state you can be in for the most part, a lot of people go, oh yeah, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, right? You've heard that phrase, and you've heard that phrase with insert your home state here at the back of it, right? Colorado, I do think it's a little more true here than in other places. Pikes Peak is literally that way. Pikes Peak is quite literally that way. It is absolutely schizophrenic with the weather. It is really nuts up there. 1 minute it's nice, the next minute it's snowing. After that, there's thunder and lightning, and then it's nice again, and then it snows again on you. And then there's some freezing rain while you're at it. So, I mean, it can be that way. So, shuttling your team around in a, all-wheel drive, off-road focused, lifted 911, it's the perfect tool. The perfect tool. But Porsche here, come on, Porsche, what are you doing? What are you doing? I feel like all I do on this show is complain about cool cars that manufacturers won't sell us. That's too bad. That's too bad. I want to complain about cool cars that you will sell us, which is probably why you won't sell us the cool cars, because you sell the cool cars and then everyone complains about them. Toyota, got to warranty those cars. After 80 miles an hour, come on. I'm never letting that go. So anyway, but Porsche here has made, they're saying, 2,500 911 Dakars. 2,500. And they told us granted, I will say this shouldn't come as a shock, and it's not a shock, but it is still equally disappointing. They said that this was coming at the very beginning. They told us they were going to make a limited run of these 911s, and so let me pull up the the MSRP here for you real quick. Because granted, they're not necessarily the cheapest things in the world. And you could grab one for a crispy, Edmunds.com has one right now for $222,000. So granted, you're on the higher end for some of your Porsche stuff. You're definitely not at the highest end for Porsche stuff, but you're also not at your, you're definitely not at your entry-level Boxster or something, right? You're not there. But even then, $220,000, I think part of that's the issue here. You make it special edition from the onset, and then you put a really high price tag on it, $222,000 some dollars. I that's what you could get one now for. Now, granted, as soon as they're out of production, well, they are out of production. The last ones are rolling off the line, so you can expect those prices. I should clarify, you probably can't get one of those now for $222,000. Not with Porsche collectors. No, I guarantee it. Mark my words. As soon as the final one is sold off, they've built the final one, it's off there. As soon as that's in somebody's hands, there's going to be probably 2 or 3 of these that are going to pop up on Auto Trader or Cars and Bids or, Bring a Trailer, whatever, for like $1 million. Starting price. Yeah, $1 million. $1 million reserve on a 911 with some off-road tires, and it's lifted. So, I mean, the thing is, Porsche, like I said, they do this. They tease us with nice things, and then they make them really expensive. And part of that expense is tough. So you made an off-road 911. Great. It's fun. In fact, it's probably the most fun you can have off the pavement ever, right? It's a really cool car. And it's fun to drive. It looks great still. And it's very unusual because you drive by and people are like, was that a lifted 911? Yeah, it was. And it's got you can have a roof rack and all these cool accessories with it, but it's really expensive. So when was the last time you took something that was, say, $250,000 and just bashed it around on some trails off-road? You probably haven't done that. I haven't done that. My Subaru was like $2,000. And I broke it. I blew the head gasket in a week. I did thrash that around off-road a little bit. But, 200 and let's just say even math, $250,000 for this car to go off-road it. And it's a special edition, so people know there's not going to be another one, which means it's going to get the collector hype, and nobody is going to drive it off-road. In fact, the only one that's probably been driven off-road was the press car that was making all the rounds and that did like the Nürburgring, and they cut through the middle of the Nürburgring, right? That was probably the only one that was actually earnestly driven off-road hard. And I'm here to say, no more. No more. We want off-road sports cars. I'm speaking for you. I'm sure if I'm this dead set on off-road sports cars, I'm just going to assume you are. And even if you're not, just go along with me on it, okay? Just go along with me on it. But, we need more of this. We need off-road sports cars that are not only fun and cool, but actually affordable. Like Porsche, what about this car earnestly makes it $250,000 compared to a base model 911? Yeah, you've got the suspension. Yeah, you've got some skid plates. Yeah, you've changed the geometry of the, control arms and some of that stuff a bit for the lift. But is that really $250,000? Is it? I don't know. Anyway, we need more cars like this. Porsche's not going to give it to us. I'm looking over at you, Toyota. I know you're not going to give it to us either. But anyway, well, we shall mourn the loss of the 911 Dakar. Anyway, coming up after the break, we're going to talk about Bugatti setting a world record that you didn't think about. That's right here on Automotive ADHD. And you can send those car sounds in, and you should. Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. A happy belated birthday to the sender of those car sounds. By the way, Matt West here hanging out with you, talking cars on the weekend. You've tuned into the correct car show. And in the past, I've said the number one car show here in Colorado Springs by default. And I've been told recently by my Salem media colleague, Ed Brady, that is no longer the case. There is actually another car show here in town on the air. So at a competing radio station who shall not be mentioned on these airwaves. But anyway, but I should invite those guys on my show so we can have them on as guests. I think that would be pretty fun. And then that way I can also sort of cannibalize like the viewership from that. So I can have them on my own show competing with themselves later on. I think that's a brilliant idea. They probably won't agree to it. So anyway, oh man, I was talking about Porsche in the last segment, how they tease us with cool stuff that they'll never really sell to us. And yeah, it's somewhat expensive. Let's throw that idea, I mean, far into the realm of the extreme. Let's go absolutely nuts with it now. Bugatti. All right, so Bugatti has set a world record, top speed world record and you might be saying, yeah, Bugatti tends to do that for production cars at least. They've done that. They've held that title in various forms for a long time. But this time, they said, well, you know what? We're not going to set a top speed record for, fastest production car. We did that. We already did it. It is what it is. Famously, now 14 some years ago, they did the Bugatti Veyron, which hit 268 miles per hour. That was back in 2010. And that was, headlines everywhere, blowing up magazines. I remember it on Top Gear. And that was really cool. But now they took that record. They've really just said, let's make a new vehicle, 282 miles per hour. But wait, it's a convertible with the top down. Yeah. So they now have, instead of just saying, well, we have the fastest production car in the world. And, granted, they trade places with, Hennessy and these other companies. They kind of tussle back and forth for that position. Those records keep getting overtaken. But they said now that, we're going to do the top speed run for a convertible. And I think this is a lot of fun. 282 miles per hour on here. And it is the Bugatti Mistral. And it's for a convertible. I think this is a great idea because, when wouldn't you want to do 282 miles per hour, your hair blowing in the wind on a beautiful sunny day? I'm sure your hair's probably doing a lot of blowing in the wind at 282 miles per hour. So I think that's a lot of fun. Now, granted, I was talking, like I said last segment, about Porsche and how they don't sell us things that we want. I guarantee Bugatti's probably not gonna sell many of these cars. And you and me, I don't want to make this assumption. I don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make this assumption about you, the listener, but I have a feeling you and me won't be buying one of these because it has a retail price of $14 million. $14 million. That's where it starts. Then you put options on that. You want any cool option on there. Just keep going up on there. Also, even if you just walked over to Bugatti with $14 million, they probably wouldn't even sell the car to you. No, you have to be invited to buy the car at Bugatti. Who gets invited to buy cars at Bugatti? Well, probably not you and me. That's for sure. In fact, I will probably never be invited to buy a car at Bugatti. Have they seen what I do to my cars? So anyway, now one other topic I want to touch on here. We got a few minutes here in the show. Is what is the most dangerous car brand to drive? What is it? Like, what cars have the most number of wrecks in general? And this comes by way of Motor Trend. Alex Kirsten at Motor Trend, hat tip there, who put this together, saying the deadliest car brand in America is, are you ready for it? Tesla. Yeah, Tesla. Isn't that amazing? Aren't they supposed to drive themselves? I thought they were supposed to drive themselves. That's what I was under the impression of. And anyway, so Tesla per capita has the most number of crashes and fatalities even per vehicle. Now, does that necessarily mean the vehicles themselves are less safe? Now, the fatality rate on these is 5.6 accidents per billion vehicle miles traveled. So that's per billion miles traveled. And now, granted, that's 5.6 per all of those miles. That's really not a lot. I mean, we're looking in the world of modern cars. Modern cars are very safe. We're not driving around in Ford Pintos, for example. We're not doing that. Modern cars these days, generally speaking, are very safe. You can reasonably expect to go buy any newer production car and know that you'll probably all be all right in most accidents. I'm saying most. We know Kia drivers exist, so I can't say that definitively. And speaking of Kia comes in at a close second, 5.5 fatalities per billion miles. How do you have, I don't want to get gruesome here. I'm not trying to pry into this too far. How do you have 5.5 fatalities? How do you have half a, anyway, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, so, but Kia definitely comes in close second there. I mean, if you've seen any Kia drivers on the road, you know that you need to steer clear of them. And I think that's probably because Kias are generally cheaper and they attract the sort of people who either are very uninterested in driving, don't care about learning to get better at driving, and they just want something that, well, when they crash it, it doesn't cost them all that much money. I think that's typically your average Kia driver, especially someone buying a Kia new. They might be buying a new Kia for their 16-year-old daughter, and, well, you know what she's going to do to the car. So, but Buick comes in at third, by the way. Buick, are people still buying Buicks? I didn't know people still bought Buicks. Dodge at fourth. Hyundai 3.9. I think Hyundai should get an honorary second place with Kia because, well, they're the same company. But anyway, so, the moral of the story here, I think, is, rather than, pinning it on vehicle design and, safety and stuff like that, I think what this really means is people need to be better drivers. That's what they're saying is what I think these statistics are saying is that people need to be better drivers. It's not necessarily how safe the car is. I mean, again, modern manufacturing techniques are very, very good when it comes to safety these days. Very good. Even on cheaper cars. That's what we get. That's because we're paying so much more money for new cars because they're so much more expensive these days. We're paying for a lot of that safety. A lot of that safety is, well, it's in there. And I think a lot of this comes down to the drivers. I think you look at drivers being inattentive. We have more distracted drivers now than we have ever had, I think, in the history of driving. And it's no wonder that Teslas are fairly high on that list. You got a big old touchscreen right there in the center. The whole thing is a smartphone on wheels with distractions here and there. And, I've been in a number of Teslas now, and I've even struggled, even as a passenger, to change the climate control. If you're kind of on a bouncy Colorado road, our paved roads pretty much, they're terrible here, right? They're third world. So you're kind of being jostled around no matter what, and you're trying to change the climate control, and your hand's bouncing up and down on the touchscreen, and you're not hitting the button perfectly. And you know my opinion on touchscreens if you listen to this show for any length of time. I've ranted about it multiple times, but it's not a wonder to me that happens. And additionally, the Tesla autopilot stuff, I'm not going to come out and blame the Tesla autopilot. I think the majority of the Tesla autopilot issues are user generated, if you know what I mean. It's people using it wrong, not like they're supposed to. So anyway, you're listening to the Automotive ADHD show. Thank you for joining me on this edition of the show. Remember, you can check it out on several great radio stations across Southern Colorado and as a podcast. Now with video on Spotify, too. Give it 6 stars on Spotify. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week when we'll probably talk about more cars. That's here.